The grand hall of the Zelfarian flagship Harmony of Stars gleamed with polished surfaces that reflected the soft blue light from overhead. This was the moment the Zelfarians had prepared for over many cycles. First contact with humans. Everything had to be perfect. Lieutenant Gregory Walsh stood at attention with the rest of the Earth delegation. His blue uniform was crisp, his posture rigid as he scanned the room with practiced vigilance. As security for the diplomatic team, he took his job seriously, though he hadn't expected to need much skill beyond looking official. The Zelfarians seemed peaceful enough. "Remember," Ambassador Diane Nelson whispered to her team, "these beings value order and precision above all else. No sudden movements." Gregory nodded slightly. The briefing files had been clear. The Zelfarians were a species that prized logic and control. They had no concept of randomness or biological unpredictability. Their society functioned like a well-oiled machine, with every citizen playing their precise role. The massive doors at the far end of the hall slid open without a sound. In floated the Zelfarian welcoming party. Their bodies were tall and slender, with smooth blue-gray skin that seemed to shimmer as they moved. Each one wore identical silver robes with complex patterns that Gregory guessed showed their rank or position. "Greetings, representatives of Earth," the lead Zelfarian said in perfect English, its voice resonating with a musical quality. "I am Senior Diplomat Zartul. We welcome you to the Harmony of Stars." Ambassador Nelson stepped forward. "On behalf of humanity, we thank you for this historic invitation. We hope this meeting begins a lasting friendship between our peoples." Tau. Formal introductions continued as planned. The Zelfarians moved with deliberate grace, each gesture smooth and calculated. Gregory noticed how they maintained perfect formation, moving in harmony like dancers following invisible cues. As the human team was led to a large circular table for the initial discussions, Gregory felt a slight tickle in his nose. He tried to ignore it, focusing instead on his duty to remain alert and professional. The tickle grew stronger. "We have studied your transmission data extensively," Zartul was saying. "We believe our civilizations will find much to share in terms of scientific knowledge, though your species' biological nature appears quite unpredictable compared to our own." The tickle in Gregory's nose became impossible to ignore. He pressed his finger against his nose discreetly, trying to suppress the building pressure. Not now, he thought desperately. The room was silent, except for Zartul's voice as it continued outlining the proposed agenda for the week-long diplomatic visit. "Our first session will focus on basic biological differences between The sneeze exploded from Gregory with unexpected force. "Achoo!" The sound echoed through the silent hall like a gunshot. What happened next unfolded like a scene from a comedy, though no one was laughing. Every Zelfarian in the room froze in place, their silvery eyes widening in what could only be described as pure horror. Several of them moved backward with surprising speed. One dropped a translucent tablet that shattered on the floor. "Contamination alert. Human malfunction detected." A voice blared through hidden speakers. Gregory wiped his nose with the back of his hand, mortified. "I'm sorry, just a sneeze," he said, his voice sounding absurdly loud in the chaos that was unfolding. The Zelfarians were now in full emergency mode. Several had produced scanning devices and were pointing them at Gregory from a safe distance. Others appeared to be communicating through invisible channels, their head tendrils vibrating rapidly. "Is the human unit damaged?" one Zelfarian asked Ambassador Nelson with genuine concern. That expulsion of particles appeared violent and uncontrolled. Ambassador Nelson struggled to maintain her diplomatic composure. No damage at all. Humans sneeze sometimes. It's a normal bodily function to expel irritants from the nasal passage. The explanation did nothing to calm the aliens. If anything, they seemed more disturbed. "You mean this explosive particle discharge happens regularly, without warning?" Zartul asked, keeping a careful distance from Gregory. "Well, yes," Nelson admitted. "It's involuntary but completely harmless." The word involuntary sent another wave of alarm through the Zelfarian ranks. 3 new aliens in what appeared to be protective gear entered the room, carrying equipment that beeped and flashed. Your bodies perform functions without conscious control? A Zelfarian scientist asked, the concept clearly disturbing to them. How do you maintain system integrity without full operational awareness? Gregory, still embarrassed, found his voice. Our bodies handle many functions automatically. Breathing, digestion, heartbeat. We don't have to think about them. This information was met with silent horror. The Zelfarians huddled together, their tendrils touching in what the humans would later learn was their method of direct information exchange. After several tense minutes, Zartul approached the human delegation again, though keeping a noticeably greater distance than before. We must apologize for our reaction, it said formally. Our species evolved from a collective consciousness, where all biological processes are carefully regulated. The concept of autonomous bodily functions is unsettling to us. Ambassador Nelson nodded understandingly. Cultural differences are why these meetings are so important. We have much to learn about each other. Gregory noticed a small device had been placed on the wall nearest to him, occasionally emitting a soft glow in his direction. He suspected he was now being monitored for further malfunctions. The meeting slowly resumed, though with a new tension in the air. The Zelfarians kept stealing glances at the humans, as if expecting them to explode or malfunction at any moment. Gregory noticed several of them had moved to positions where they could quickly exit the room if needed. Perhaps, Zartul suggested carefully, we should begin with a more thorough exchange of basic biological information than originally planned. Your unpredictable nature presents unique challenges to our protocols. As the diplomatic team agreed to this change in agenda, Gregory caught the eye of fellow security officer Kate Miller, who was struggling not to smile. He knew the story of the sneeze that almost derailed first contact would become legendary back on Earth. By the end of the first day, the Zelfarians had created a special observation team dedicated solely to documenting human malfunctions. Gregory's sneeze had been classified as a Level 2 biological anomaly in their records. What neither species realized was that this was only the beginning of a series of misunderstandings that would eventually transform their relationship in ways no one could predict. As night fell on the harmony of stars, the Zelfarian scientists gathered to review their findings, while the humans tried to prepare for a diplomatic mission that had taken an unexpected turn before it had truly begun. For Gregory Walsh, one thing was certain: he would forever be remembered as the first human to malfunction in front of an alien species. He only hoped it wouldn't be listed as his most significant achievement in the history books. 3 weeks had passed since the sneeze incident, and the diplomatic mission aboard the Harmony of Stars had settled into an unusual routine. The Zelfarians had assigned a special observation team to document what they called human malfunction episodes, following the humans everywhere with scanning devices and recording equipment. Olivia Carter sat in the cultural exchange room, surrounded by screens showing Earth landscapes and art. As the communication specialist for the mission, she had been tasked with helping the Zelfarians understand human languages and customs. She found their fascination with humans both amusing and exhausting. So you see, she explained to the 3 Zelfarians watching her intently, human languages evolved separately in different regions, which is why we have so many of them. The lead alien researcher, who had introduced itself as science officer, Mevrin, made notes on a transparent tablet. Inefficient system, it commented. Our species developed unified communication early in our evolution. Olivia smiled patiently. Different doesn't always mean inefficient. Diversity can be a strength. The Zelfarians exchanged looks of polite disagreement. Their silver eyes blinked in perfect unison, a habit Olivia still found unsettling. The door slid open, and Frank Mason walked in carrying several containers. Frank was the mission's cultural attaché, a job that mostly involved answering increasingly bizarre questions about human behavior. I brought lunch, Frank announced cheerfully. The kitchen staff made us sandwiches and they attempted to make something edible for our Zelfarian friends. He set down a tray containing 3 bowls of what looked like blue gelatin that pulsed slightly. The Zelfarians moved to their food with synchronized grace. They're really trying with the food, Olivia said quietly to Frank. Yesterday, they made something almost like pasta. Frank nodded and unwrapped his sandwich. I heard they've been studying human digestive patterns. Apparently, they find our need to eat solid food multiple times daily very primitive. Olivia took a bite of her sandwich and watched as the Zelfarians absorbed nutrients from their pulsing blue food by placing their long fingers directly into it. The aliens had explained that their bodies extracted energy through specialized cells in their fingertips, a process they considered much more evolved than chewing and swallowing. "How's your day been?" Frank asked, sitting beside her. "Explaining idioms has been the biggest challenge," Olivia said. "Try telling a logical alien species why humans say it's raining cats and dogs when it's just water falling from the sky." Frank laughed. "I had to explain snoring to them yesterday. They thought Captain Rogers was having a respiratory emergency during his nap." "Speaking of sleep," Olivia whispered, "have you noticed they've been scanning our quarters during rest hours?" I woke up to find monitoring equipment hovering over my bed. Frank nodded. "They seemed terrified by the concept of sleep. I overheard one of them calling it a daily death ritual in their language." As the Zelfarians finished their meal, Science Officer Mevrin approached the humans again. "We would like to continue our cultural exchange with a presentation on Zelfarian art forms," it announced formally. The lights dimmed, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. Complex patterns of light began to shift and flow in geometric formations, accompanied by sounds that reminded Olivia of wind chimes and distant bells. "This is our primary artistic expression," Mevrin explained. "Pattern symphony in perfect mathematical harmony. Each movement calculated to precise specifications for optimal aesthetic appreciation." Olivia watched the display with genuine interest. While alien, there was beauty in the precise movements and calculated patterns. Frank, however, seemed less impressed. "Very nice," he said politely when the display ended. "Reminds me of your food, actually. All those wiggly blue bits moving around." Mevrin turned its head at an exact 45-degree angle, which the humans had learned was a sign of confusion. "Our nutrition gel bears no aesthetic resemblance to pattern symphony art." Frank grinned. "I guess you could say your art has more jellyvating qualities than your food." There was a moment of silence as the Zelfarians processed this statement. Their translation system seemed to struggle with the wordplay. Olivia, however, caught the terrible pun immediately. A small snort escaped her, followed by a giggle she tried to suppress by covering her mouth. "Jellyvating? Really, Frank?" She managed before another wave of laughter hit her. The sound of Olivia's laughter triggered an immediate reaction from the Zelfarians. All three stepped back, their scanning devices suddenly raised and pointed at her face. "Human Carter is experiencing a malfunction," Mevrin announced, its voice rising in pitch. "Alert medical team." Olivia's laughter only intensified at their reaction, tears now forming in her eyes. No, she tried to explain between gasps. It's just laughter." Frank made a joke. The aliens looked at Frank with new concern. "You caused this respiratory distress reaction?" they asked. "Deliberately?" Frank nodded, himself beginning to smile at the situation. Humans laugh when they find something funny. It's a good thing. "But her breathing pattern is disrupted," one of the Zelfarians noted with alarm, "and her face is leaking fluid from the visual sensors." By now, Olivia had nearly regained control of herself. "They're tears," she explained, wiping her eyes. "Sometimes humans cry when they laugh hard. It's normal." The door slid open as the Zelfarian medical team rushed in, equipped with what looked like hazmat gear. They stopped, observing Olivia's return to normal breathing with visible relief. "False alarm," Mevrin informed them. The human experienced what they call laughter, a seemingly contagious respiratory malfunction triggered by something called a pun, which is deliberately misusing language to create confusion. The medical team didn't leave. Instead, they set up additional monitoring equipment focused on both humans. "We would like to observe more of this laughter phenomenon," the lead medical officer requested. "Can you reproduce the conditions that triggered it?" Frank grinned at Olivia. "Well, I've been working on my alien joke material. Why don't Zelfarians ever get lost in space?" The aliens leaned forward expectantly, recording devices humming, because they always take the most direct route. Frank delivered with enthusiasm. Olivia groaned but couldn't help smiling. The Zelfarians looked between them in confusion. I don't understand how this linguistic error regarding plant structures relates to space navigation, Mevrin stated. For the next hour, Frank attempted to explain the concept of wordplay to the bewildered aliens, while Olivia's occasional laughter set off a flurry of scans and readings. By the end of the day, the Zelfarian research database had created an entirely new category of human malfunctions, labeled emotional respiratory response anomalies, with laughter classified as potentially contagious but non-lethal. As Olivia and Frank left the cultural exchange room that evening, they noticed 3 more Zelfarians had been assigned to follow them. The observation team was growing. You realize we're probably going to end up as the subject of the galaxy's most bizarre research paper, Olivia commented. Frank nodded, smiling. At least we're giving them plenty of material. Wait until they see someone cry from sadness instead of laughter. Neither human noticed the concerned glances exchanged by their alien observers at the mention of yet another unknown human malfunction waiting to be discovered. 2 months into the diplomatic mission, the Zelfarians had established a complex system for categorizing what they still insisted on calling human malfunctions. Their scientists had filled many databases with observations, measurements, and theories about the unpredictable nature of human biology. Chief researcher Vex Moore stood in the observation center, surrounded by screens showing various humans going about their daily activities. Each human had been assigned a Zelfarian research team that tracked their biological functions around the clock. The most disturbing pattern continues to be their daily shutdown period, Vex Moore explained to a group of newly arrived scientists. They call it sleep, but it appears to be a complete system failure that occurs regularly. The screens showed sleeping quarters where several humans lay motionless on padded platforms. Monitoring equipment hovered silently above each bed, recording every breath and movement. Note how they lose consciousness but continue basic biological functions, Vex Moore continued. It remains unclear whether this represents a critical design flaw or an intentional power-saving feature. One of the new scientists moved closer to a screen showing engineer Peter Rodriguez sleeping. This specimen shows unusual eye movement beneath the closed lids, it observed. Yes, Vex Moore confirmed. They call this dreaming, a state where their minds create fictional scenarios while their bodies remain inactive. We have not yet determined the purpose of this function. In the engineering section of the ship, Peter Rodriguez sat beside Zelfarian engineer Tazavin, working together on integrating human and Zelfarian technology. The two had developed an effective working relationship, though Tazavin still flinched whenever Peter sneezed or hiccuped. This connection should allow our systems to communicate without translation delays, Peter explained, pointing to a diagram on the screen. Tazavin examined the work with approval. Efficient design. We have scheduled a presentation to the ship's leadership about our progress. We must prepare formal documentation. Peter nodded, though his enthusiasm dimmed at the thought of another long, formal Zelfarian briefing. In his experience, these meetings could last for hours, with every detail examined and recorded with excruciating precision. The briefing began later that day in a large conference room. Senior Zelfarian officials floated in perfect formation before the presentation screen, their silver robes catching the light as they moved. Peter sat beside Tazavin, trying to maintain good posture. Our integration efforts have produced 17 successful connection points between human and Zelfarian technology, Tazavin began, displaying complex diagrams and charts. The presentation continued as each technical detail was meticulously explained. The Zelfarians nodded in perfect unison at important points, occasionally making notes on their transparent tablets. For Peter, the room felt increasingly warm, and the technical jargon flowed like a gentle, monotonous river. The lack of sleep from the previous night began to catch up with him. His eyelids grew heavy as Tazavin's formal, measured voice continued explaining power conversion ratios and compatibility protocols. Peter tried to focus, pinching himself discreetly under the table. The quantum alignment matrix requires precise calibration to prevent data corruption during transfer, Tazovin was saying. Peter felt his head nod forward slightly. He jerked it back up, blinking rapidly. The room was silent except for Tazovin's voice, which seemed to grow more distant with each word. Peter's eyes closed for what he told himself would be just a second. When his chin hit his chest, Peter was already asleep. His breathing deepened and his body relaxed into the chair. The reaction among the Zelfarians was immediate, but silent. The officials in the front row froze, their eyes widening as they observed Peter's sudden shutdown. Several researchers, who had been positioned around the room, moved closer, scanning devices humming softly as they recorded the event. Tazvin paused mid-sentence, unsure how to proceed. The Zelfarian had never seen a human enter sleep mode during an official function. Engineer Rodriguez appears to have initiated emergency power conservation mode, one researcher whispered to another. During a critical information exchange, the other replied with what for a Zelfarian counted as shock. Is this a sign of system failure? The briefing was temporarily suspended as senior researcher Vexmore was summoned. When it arrived, it approached Peter's sleeping form with scientific interest rather than alarm. This is an excellent opportunity to observe the sleep function initiated outside normal parameters, Vexmore announced to the room. Please maintain silence while we collect data. The Zelfarians watched in fascinated horror as Peter's head tilted to one side and a small snore escaped his lips. Several of them backed away at the unexpected sound. Note the unusual respiratory vibration, Vexmore commented. Our theories suggest this may be an automatic system to clear blockages while consciousness is offline. After several minutes of observation and data collection, Vexmore gave permission for Peter to be awakened. A junior researcher approached cautiously and gently prodded Peter's shoulder with a scientific instrument. Peter's reaction was dramatic. He jerked awake with a loud snort, his body tensing as he sat upright, momentarily confused about where he was. I'm up. I'm listening, he announced to the room. The Zelfarian's monitoring equipment registered a sharp spike in his vital signs. Several researchers moved back in alarm at his sudden movement. Engineer Rodriguez, are your systems functioning normally? Vexmore asked, with genuine concern. Peter's face flushed red as he realized what had happened. Yes, I'm fine. I fell asleep. I'm very sorry. Vexmore's head tilted. The transition from unconscious to conscious states appears violent and disorienting. Is this typical? Peter rubbed his face, still embarrassed. Sometimes, especially if you're woken suddenly. I didn't mean to fall asleep during the presentation, These Zelfarians found this explanation fascinating rather than reassuring. The idea that consciousness could be lost and regained so unpredictably confirmed their view of humans as dangerously unstable life forms. Perhaps we should adjust meeting durations to accommodate human operational limitations, Tazvin suggested, carefully. The senior officials agreed, and the meeting was adjourned with a new protocol established. Briefings involving humans would now include regular breaks to prevent unexpected shutdowns. As Peter left the conference room, he noticed his personal Zelfarian observation team had doubled in size. His sleeping incident had been classified as a Level 3 biological anomaly in their research records, higher than Gregory's sneeze, but lower than Olivia's laughing fit. What Peter didn't know was that the Zelfarian High Command had just received a preliminary report suggesting that humans might be too unpredictable for standard diplomatic relations. The report recommended a special containment protocol for all future human interactions. The sleep incident, as it became known, would go down in Zelfarian scientific history as the day they confirmed humans were fundamentally different from any species they had encountered before. 4 months into the human Zelfarian diplomatic mission, both species had made significant progress in understanding each other. A joint scientific expedition was underway on a newly established orbital research station that floated in space, between the Zelfarian flagship and the smaller human vessel. The research station was a marvel of combined technology, its circular structure divided into sections where teams worked on shared projects. After the initial shock of human malfunctions, the Zelfarians had adapted their protocols to account for sneezing, laughing, and even the occasional nap. Lieutenant Amanda Wilson walked through the laboratory section, checking readings on the atmospheric research project she supervised. As the station's environmental specialist, she worked closely with the Zelfarian science team to study planetary atmospheres that might be suitable for both species. The nitrogen-oxygen mix in Sample 12 shows promise, she told Zelfarian researcher Limvor, who floated nearby, monitoring the sealed test chamber. Both our species could breathe this with minimal discomfort. Limvor moved its long fingers across a control panel with precise movements. Agreed. The molecular stability is within acceptable parameters for both human and Zelfarian respiratory systems. Amanda smiled, pleased with their progress. In the months since first contact, she had grown to respect the methodical approach of the Zelfarians, even if their rigid nature sometimes made communication challenging. She took a sip of water from her container and continued reviewing the data on her tablet. The experiment was going well, with potential for a breakthrough that could help both species identify planets for future joint exploration. Without warning, Amanda's diaphragm contracted sharply, causing her to jerk forward slightly. Hic! The small sound escaped her lips before she could prevent it. Limvor turned its head toward her, silver eyes narrowing slightly in concern. Did you experience a system disruption, Lieutenant Wilson? No, it's just... hic. A hiccup, Amanda explained, pressing her hand against her chest. It's a minor diaphragm spasm, nothing to worry about. Before Limvor could respond, Amanda hiccuped again, louder this time. The sound echoed slightly in the laboratory's open space. The Zelfarian moved back slightly, its head tendrils vibrating, and what Amanda had learned was a sign of distress. Your respiratory system appears to be malfunctioning repeatedly at regular intervals. Should I summon medical assistance? No need, Amanda assured him, though another hiccup interrupted her words. Hiccups are harmless. They'll stop on their own eventually. Despite her reassurance, Limvor touched a communication panel on the wall. Research laboratory requests monitoring team to observe human respiratory anomaly, it said in the musical Zelfarian language. Amanda sighed between hiccups. Just when the aliens were getting used to normal human functions, she had to develop hiccups during a crucial experiment. Really, it's not necessary, she protested. Within minutes, 3 Zelfarian researchers arrived, carrying various scanning devices. The lead researcher approached Amanda with what she recognized as scientific curiosity, rather than the alarm such malfunctions had caused in the early days of contact. This is a new category of involuntary function, the researcher noted, scanning Amanda's chest area. The repeated muscular contractions appear to serve no biological purpose. They don't, Amanda confirmed, hiccuping again. They're just annoying. Humans have different ways to try to stop them. This caught the researcher's attention immediately. There are established protocols for correcting this malfunction? One asked, tablet ready to record this valuable information. Amanda nodded. Simple tricks mostly, holding your breath, drinking water backwards, being startled, things like that. The Zelfarians exchanged glances that Amanda had come to recognize as their equivalent of excitement. We request a demonstration of these correction protocols, the lead researcher said. This could provide valuable insight into human self-repair mechanisms. What followed was perhaps the strangest scientific demonstration in the history of human-alien relations. As Amanda continued to hiccup, the Zelfarian research team meticulously documented each remedy she attempted. First, Amanda tried holding her breath, counting slowly to 30 while the Zelfarians monitored her oxygen levels with growing concern. Intentional oxygen deprivation appears ineffective, one researcher noted when she hiccuped again after exhaling. Next, she attempted to drink water from the wrong side of a cup, bending forward awkwardly as the researchers studied her technique. With fascination. The human is inverting normal fluid intake procedures, a Zelfarian observed. Purposeful disruption of established patterns may be an attempt to reset neurological signals. By now, word had spread throughout the research station. More Zelfarians gathered at the laboratory entrance, watching with scientific interest as Amanda tried increasingly desperate hiccup cures. She swallowed a spoonful of sugar, held her ears closed while drinking water, and even attempted to recite tongue twisters between hiccups. Perhaps a sudden stimulus might interrupt the cycle, suggested a Zelfarian who had been reviewing human medical data. Your records indicate that unexpected sensory input can reset involuntary functions. Amanda nodded. Sometimes a scare works, but it has to be, unexpected. The Zelfarians considered this information seriously. After a brief discussion in their language, one of them approached Amanda with what appeared to be scientific determination. "Human Wilson," it said in a perfectly normal tone, "your species will be extinct within 3 rotations due to catastrophic genetic deterioration." Amanda blinked, more confused than startled. "That's not really how scaring someone, works," she explained. The Zelfarians seemed disappointed by the failure of their attempt. They retreated to discuss other options, their tendrils vibrating rapidly as they exchanged ideas. Just as Amanda was about to suggest they simply wait for the hiccups to pass naturally, they suddenly stopped. One moment she was hiccuping and, the next, the spasms simply ceased. The laboratory fell silent as everyone waited to see if another hiccup would come. After 30 seconds of normal breathing, the lead Zelfarian researcher approached Amanda with what could only be described as awe. "The malfunction has self-corrected without intervention," it announced to the group. "This suggests humans possess autonomous repair capabilities beyond our current understanding." Amanda tried to explain that hiccups simply stopped on their own sometimes, but the Zelfarians were already documenting what they considered a remarkable recovery. In their records, the incident was classified as a spontaneous biological reset event. By the end of the day, the Zelfarian High Command had received a detailed report on human hiccups, complete with videos of all attempted remedies. The report concluded that while humans were prone to unpredictable malfunctions, they also possessed remarkable self-repair abilities that warranted further study. For her part, Amanda found herself with a new title among the Zelfarians, the Self-Healing One. It wasn't exactly the scientific recognition she had hoped for, but as diplomatic breakthroughs went, it could have been worse. As she prepared for sleep that night, Amanda noticed the Zelfarian observation team outside her quarters had been upgraded with new equipment. She wondered what other normal human functions would amaze their alien colleagues tomorrow. 6 months after first contact, the Zelfarian collective faced an unexpected crisis. Their flagship Harmony of Stars had encountered a strange space phenomenon near the edge of an uncharted system. The ship's perfect but rigid navigation systems struggled to process the unusual gravitational readings. Captain Ryan Butler stood on the bridge of the Zelfarian vessel, watching the alien crew work with growing concern. As the human liaison officer assigned to the flagship, he had spent months learning about Zelfarian technology and culture. What he saw now worried him deeply. "The anomaly is expanding," reported Navlor, the Zelfarian navigation chief. Its usually calm voice contained what Ryan had learned to recognize as their version of anxiety. "Our systems cannot plot a safe course through the distortion field." The main screen showed a swirling mass of energy that seemed to bend the very fabric of space around it. The Zelfarian ship had already begun to drift toward the phenomenon, caught in its gentle but persistent pull. "Have you tried recalibrating the sensors to account for the gravitational fluctuations?" Ryan asked, moving closer to Navlor's station. "Our systems are calibrated to perfection," the Zelfarian replied stiffly. "The anomaly defies standard navigational parameters. It does not behave according to established physical laws." Ryan looked at the data flowing across the alien screens. The Zelfarian navigational system was indeed perfect for normal space conditions. But it was also completely inflexible, designed to follow exact protocols without deviation. "Sometimes perfection isn't what you need," Ryan said, earning confused looks from the Zelfarian crew. "Sometimes you need a bit of imperfection to handle the unexpected." The ship shuddered slightly as the gravitational forces increased. The perfect formation of the Zelfarian bridge crew wavered for the first time since Ryan had known them. several floating slightly out of position as they worked frantically at their stations. High Commander Zelnar approached Ryan, its silver robes reflecting the emergency lights that now flashed throughout the bridge. "Captain Butler, your species has considerable experience with malfunctioning. Perhaps you have insight that could assist us in this situation." Ryan smiled despite the seriousness of the moment. After months of watching the Zelfarians document every human sneeze, hiccup, and yawn as dangerous system failures, they were now asking for help precisely because humans weren't perfect. "Your navigation system is too perfect," Ryan explained. "It's looking for an ideal solution that doesn't exist. Sometimes you need to embrace a bit of chaos to find a way forward." Zelnar's head tilted in the now familiar sign of confusion. "Chaos is inefficient and dangerous. Our systems are designed to eliminate unpredictability. And that's exactly why they're failing now," Ryan said, pointing to the swirling anomaly on the screen. "That thing out there is pure unpredictability. You can't fight it with perfect logic." The ship shuddered again, more violently this time. Warning sounds echoed through the bridge as the vessel continued its slow drift toward the anomaly. "What do you suggest?" Zelnar asked, desperation evident in its voice. Ryan took a deep breath. "Let me introduce a controlled error into your navigation system. A bit of constructive chaos that will give your computers more flexibility, Unday." Zelfarians looked horrified at the suggestion. Deliberately introducing an error into their perfect systems went against everything they believed in. "You want us to malfunction on purpose?" Navlor asked incredulously. "Exactly," Ryan confirmed. "A planned malfunction to overcome an unexpected problem. It's what humans do all the time." After a moment of silent communication among the Zelfarian leadership, Zelnar nodded gravely. "Proceed, Captain Butler. We trust your experience with imperfection." Ryan moved to the navigation console, his fingers hovering over the alien controls. Thanks to months of integration work between human and Zelfarian technology, he understood the basics of their systems. "I'm going to introduce a random variable into the navigation calculations," he explained as he worked. "It will force the computer to consider solutions outside its normal parameters." The Zelfarians watched in fascination and horror as Ryan deliberately disrupted their perfect system. To them, it was like watching someone intentionally break a priceless object to solve a problem. As the new calculations took effect, the ship's engines changed tone. The vessel shuddered once more, then began to move laterally, sliding around the edge of the anomaly rather than fighting directly against its pull. "It's working," Navlor announced with surprise. "The ship is finding a path through the distortion field." On the main screen, they could see the swirling mass of energy now moving past them rather than pulling them in. The Zelfarian crew watched, in amazement as their ship, guided by deliberately imperfect calculations, navigated safely around the space phenomenon. When they were finally clear of danger, Zelnar approached Ryan again. "Your intentional malfunction saved our vessel," it said formally. "Perhaps what we have been classifying as human system failures are actually adaptive features." Ryan smiled. "That's exactly what they are. Humans aren't perfect, but our imperfections make us flexible. We sneeze to clear irritants, laugh to release tension, sleep to process information, and hiccup. Well, hiccups are still mostly just annoying. But the point is, what looks like a malfunction is often just a different kind of function." In the days that followed, the Zelfarian High Council convened an unprecedented session to discuss the implications of what they now called the adaptive malfunction incident. Their conclusion reshaped their understanding of humanity. The official report, copies of which were transmitted to both the human delegation and Zelfarian fleet, contained a recommendation that shocked many conservative Zelfarians. Human unpredictability was to be reclassified as a valuable trait rather than a dangerous flaw. 1 week later, Ryan stood beside High Commander Zelnar as they signed a historic agreement. The Zelfarian Collective formally requested that more humans join their exploration fleets, specifically to provide adaptive thinking and constructive unpredictability when needed. "Today marks a new understanding between our peoples," Zelnar announced to the assembled dignitaries. We have learned that perfection is not always the path to success. Sometimes a well-timed malfunction is exactly what is needed. As Ryan stepped forward to sign the agreement, he felt a familiar tickle in his nose. The Zelfarians around him noticed his expression change, and instead of backing away in alarm as they would have months ago, they watched with newfound appreciation. When Ryan sneezed, several Zelfarians actually attempted to imitate the sound, a gesture of respect in their culture. The sound of alien sneezes filled the ceremonial hall, marking perhaps the strangest diplomatic breakthrough in human history. As Ryan wiped his nose and smiled at his alien colleagues, he knew that what had begun as a series of embarrassing human malfunctions had ended with a profound lesson for both species. Perfection was overrated, and sometimes the most valuable function of all was the ability to malfunction in just the right way.